ඔෆිස් එකේදී විතරක් නෙවෙයි මම දැන් ගෙදරදිත් IDD කෝස් ගන්න SLT ෆෝන් එකේ.
ඔබේ නිවසේ SLT දුරකථනය දැන් IDD පහසුකම සහිතයි.
Good evening. Tonight, celebrating Vesak, President Maithripala Sirisena says that the next cabinet will support solving issues centering religious affairs. Cabinet reshuffle. SLFP 16 faction says that the upcoming reshuffle will only address needs of the United National Party and not the nation.
The new portfolios or cabinet positions or new faces are not the answer for the people's problem.
I have my doubts as to whether this bunch of people can deliver with the Prime Minister sitting as the Prime Minister of the country.
Back to the market. Plantation Minister says glyphosate will be reintroduced to the tea market on the back of a ban from Japan for Premier Ceylon tea. Depreciating rupee. State Finance Minister says the depreciation would not have impact on the outstanding debt repayment.
The only sustainable solution is to increase exports and increase the real earning of US dollars.
And in international headlines, Koreans for peace. The world hails the Inter-Korean Summit as a success for peace, but USA's sanctions against North Korea continues. A very good evening and welcome to First at 9, Other Derana's premier English news coverage. Hello everyone, I'm Mahesh Johnny. First, we take a look at local stories. President Maithripala Sirisena affirms that a comprehensive cabinet reshuffle will take place on the 1st of May and will solve many problems, including issues centering religious affairs. The president made this statement at a religious ceremony held at the Dambulla Sri Walagamba Mahapirivena Viharaya. Earlier, the president said changes to the cabinet will not be a reshuffle, but a completely new cabinet will be named using a scientific methodology. I hope you will receive a minister who supports your religious affairs without any interruption. I will specially pay attention to that. On the 1st of May, you will find out that I have provided a solution to your issues through new appointments. With the Vesak Poya Day around the corner, we have to be dedicated towards creating a better disciplined society. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa says much change cannot be expected from the reappointment of a cabinet of ministers. He said this responding to reporters following religious observances in Wadwa today. We are celebrating the day of Vesak Poya tomorrow while the rest of the world marks the day in May. The May Day too has been postponed to the 7th. People voted for a change, so I think that change is now taking place.
The former president also responded to questions by journalists.
They're shuffling the same pack of cards. What did the UNP do in the name of reforms? No, we didn't invite them, and in fact there is nothing to invite them for, as they are ready to work with us against the government. We welcome them wholeheartedly. I'm pleased about that because he is a senior politician and is well aware of parliamentary procedures. Also commenting on the cabinet reshuffle, former Minister S.V. Dissanayake said the appointments will only be an effort to satisfy the needs of the United National Party members. Speaking to First at 9, the former minister added that the expected new cabinet appointments will not be a solution to the current political situation but prove to be a mere unsuccessful move.
No. I think it's not the solution at all. I think when we want to expand the cabinet portfolios, giving the various people of the UNP and satisfy the UNP temporary. But the president, logically, he thinks it's not possible because 16 members of the government side already they are joined opposition. People are very worried about the present situation of the government. They are fed up with the government. So I think the new portfolios or cabinet positions or new faces are not the answer for the people's problem. It's another unsuccessful patch only.
Speaking to First at 9, former Minister Chandima Virakodi added that he doubts the new cabinet of ministers will be able to deliver what is expected of them with the current Premier in office.
There had been cabinet reshuffles, but unfortunately we have not seen results. Future reshuffle, I hope, will be a successful beginning, but personally I have my doubts as to whether this bunch of people can deliver with the Prime Minister sitting as the Prime Minister of the country.
The former minister added that the group of 16 SLFP members who vacated their positions in the unity government after voting for the no confidence motion against the Premier can live up to the expectations of the general public by sitting with the opposition.
Well, as ministers of the government, we tried our level best to contribute towards development. We tried our level best to impress people by delivering. But the signal that we get from the people is that the performance of the government is unsatisfactory. So therefore, we believe by being in the opposition, we can satisfy the expectations of the people by giving the government a warning and also getting together to form a government that the people expect.
State Minister of Finance Derana Wickramaratne observes that the hierarchy of the United National Party should be elected by a way of a vote. The State Minister added that there is a question as to whether UNP voters accept the new members appointed for key positions in line with the party reformation process. He made this statement addressing the media at the Bandaranaike International Airport today.
What they promised was restructuring. The Prime Minister remains as leader, okay, good enough. Then there was a huge allegation that Prime Minister's clique was running the party. Except for Mr. Malik Samar Wickrama, all the people who got elected there, either Prime Minister's blue-eyed boys or the same old clique that had problems. So this restructuring will only create more problems and not solutions to Mr. Kaushik.
I believe that the leadership of the UNP, including the deputy leader and the assistant leader's positions, should be elected through a vote. This is a restructure, but we doubt whether reforms are acceptable in the public view. Hence, we state that our hierarchy of the party should be elected through a vote so that there won't be any accusations of nepotism. Not only me, but the majority of the UNP genuinely believe so. Anyone appointed as party leader after Ranil Wickremesinghe should therefore be elected to this position. Appointments through elections haven't always turned successful. Going by this theory, then an election should be held within the army to appoint a new army commander. An election could be held anywhere if you gather a group of boys. My view is that appointments within the UNP should be the way the party leader wants. A leader is not necessary if the party works according to someone else's wants. Minister of Plantation Industries Navin Dissanayake says that measures will be taken to reintroduce glyphosate to the market as soon as possible. His comments come soon after Japanese authorities rejected several consignments of tea worth 1 billion rupees yesterday. He added that a special committee has been appointed to spearhead the program as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon, Sunil Pohulia, said that ad hoc decisions such as the glyphosate ban should not be taken in order to avoid such incidents.
Japanese authorities rejected several consignments of tea yesterday as the stock contained a weedicide known as MCPA, which is not accepted by Japan. According to the Sri Lanka Tea Board, the country faces the risk of losing 10 billion rupees in tea export earnings annually if Sri Lanka is blacklisted in the Japanese market. Japan is among the top importers of premium Ceylon tea. Speaking at the media briefing today, Minister of Plantation Industry Navin Dissanayake said that the rejected tea consignment was valued at 1 billion rupees.
If we need to protect our market, we need to halt the use of NCPA immediately. We have appointed a committee of experts together with Minister Dumida Dissanayake. We will take measures to reintroduce glyphosate into the market, but only at the required amount. When we introduced a ban, there should also be an alternative. It is not us who ban this use of glyphosate. We suffer repercussions such as this when decisions are taken without a scientific basis.
අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම අනිසි ප්‍රතිඵල තේ ක්ෂේත්‍රයට ලැබිලා තියෙනවා.
Speaking to First at 9, Chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon, Sunil Poholiadde said that the plantation sector is faced with difficulty due to the failure of providing an alternative for glyphosate.
There should not be ad hoc decisions taken like this, because one has to look at all aspects of it. After 3 years, we could see the difficulty we face and the repercussions of it. Now, all what we say is, since there is no substitute, even as a weedicide, until then, the ban should be lifted, because otherwise the industry would suffer a lot. In terms of producers, we suffer a lot without even a substitute, because the only way that we could handle the weed issue is by manual weeding, for which we do not have sufficient workers, and also there's a lot of damage done to by undertaking manual weeding.
Strong winds in the Atlantic Ocean, more than 10,000 kilometers from the Indian coast, has given rise to high energy waves in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, prompting weather alerts for several states in India over the last 1 week. The Meteorological Department of Sri Lanka says thereby temporarily localized strong winds during thunder showers are expected in several parts of the island. Director General of the Met Department, Sarath Premalal, said that severe thunderstorm warnings have been issued for Western, Sabaragamuwa, Central, Northwestern and Uva provinces. Assistant Director of the Disaster Management Centre, Pradeep Kodipilli, meanwhile said that 5 spill gates of Udawalaba Reservoir have been opened owing to the inclement weather conditions.
So there are a lot of rain being reported in Galle district this evening. More than 80 millimeters rain being reported in Galle Nellore area. And one incident reported in Galle district, the road has been blocked from Nellore to Moramaka. At the Mabegam area, so people need to be vigilant with that detouring of that road. And there are 5 spill gates been opened in Udawala Reservoir, and people who are living in downstream area has to be very vigilant in that situation, because there are a lot of spilling conditions being recorded so far. So all the vulnerable communities and the officials been informed so far by the disaster management unit, and district disaster management units from Ratnapura, Hambantota and Monaragal also been completely informed.
Actually, we expect evening thunder showers these days, especially during the afternoon, just after 2 p.m. So probably thunder showers will occur over most provinces in the island tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and even today. In addition, we can expect some fairly heavy falls, just about 75 millimeters, over the western, Sabaragamuwa, Central, Southern and Uva provinces.
All 18 persons sustained injuries after a bus toppled on the Southern Expressway near the Pinnaduwa exit this morning. An investigation has been launched into the accident by the Akmimana police. With that, here's a look at more stories across Sri Lanka.
A Katharagama-bound private passenger bus toppled near the Pinnaduwa exit on the Southern Expressway at around 7:30 a.m. today. Police said that the driver had lost control when the bus disabled due to a flat tyre. 18 injured passengers were rushed to the Karapitiya Teaching Hospital. They were identified as residents of Meeghatanna area. The owner of the SUV, which toppled into the Vienna Canal in Mahiangana recently, surrendered to Mahiangana police this morning. An SUV toppled into the Vienna Canal off the Mahiangana-Badulla main road earlier on Thursday, and it was recovered by police with support from area residents, a few meters away from where it had toppled, with the driver unaccounted for. A total of 2,630 suspects have been arrested for various offences following an island-wide operation last night. Meanwhile, police media spokesperson SP Ruwagunasekara said 8,276 persons were charged for traffic violations during the operation. An Italian female was apprehended with 5.272 grams of hashish by Customs Narcotics Control staff attached to the Bandaranaike International Airport. The 32-year-old suspect was bound to Samoa via Bangkok at 6:45 a.m. today, carrying the hashish valuing 5 million rupees concealed in a false bottom of her baggage. Meanwhile, 4 Sri Lankan passengers were apprehended by custom officials at the Bandaranaike International Airport while attempting to smuggle out gold jewellery and silver-plated gold jewellery worth 8.9 million rupees. The 3 females and the male suspects were bound to Mumbai and were identified as residents of Galle, Colombo and Jaffna.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Let's move on to business news now. State Minister of Finance Dr. Harsha De Silva says there will be no impact on the outstanding debt stock of the country given the rupee's steep depreciation. However, the former finance minister said that the devaluation of the local currency impacts the budget while stressing that monetary and fiscal policy should complement each other. The Sri Lankan rupee closed at a fresh low of 157.85 to 95 against the US dollar yesterday, weakening further from the previous record of 157.75 to 95 on Thursday. It has been hitting record lows for 5 straight sessions.
In 2016, the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated 3.9% against the US dollar, while last year the Sri Lankan currency devalued 2.5%. Yesterday, the Sri Lankan rupee hit a record closing low, weakening for 5 out of 6 sessions, as dollar demand from importers and banks surpassed selling of the greenback by exporters early in the day. The rupee has fallen 0.9% so far this week and weakened 2.7% so far this year. Dealers said they expect the rupee to gradually weaken and face higher volatility this year due to debt repayments by the government.
The debt stock remains what the debt stock was and is. It is expressed in United States dollars and not in rupees. Also, appreciation and depreciation of the rupee is based on market forces. Of course, sometimes people with various untested or archaic or political ideas attempt to forcibly maintain the value of a currency at a particular level. This policy of holding the rupee at 112, 113 cost us almost $4.2 billion. Ultimately, what happened after losing $4.2 billion? The rupee depreciated to 132 and 35 cents. So these are not sustainable solutions. The only sustainable solution is to increase exports and increase the real earning of US dollars. The central bank has almost $10 billion in foreign exchange reserves currently. If we want to intervene, there could not have been a better time to intervene.
Meanwhile, former Minister of Finance Ravi Karunanayake said that the monetary policy should go in line with the fiscal policy of the country.
But a monetary policy must go in line with the fiscal policy. But here now the officials try to basically make things out as if everything is good when the political implications are far greater. We must bear in mind that every 1 rupee devaluation has an impact of 30 billion in impact to the budget. Likewise, a 1% interest rate increase has an impact of 50 billion to the budget. Now, these are not something that you project. It so happens at the time of payment, if the rupee is at 160, then so be that for what was projected 153 at the start has a 7 rupee impact. So, without doing anything to the country, you have 210 billion added on to the state coffers. So, these are the inimical things in trying to run an economy. If they were independent, impartial, they should have been carrying out this, that we wouldn't have had this impact now.
Meanwhile, UPF MP Chandima Weerakodiya expressed views on the depreciation of the rupee.
I can remember the time the Hambantota port issue came up. We were told at that time by the central bank officials and the other advisors was that if the government doesn't proceed with the Hambantota transaction, that the dollar will go up to 160. Hambantota was proceeded on that basis. But now look at what has happened. What we explained, or rather our position at that time, has materialized. The position of the central bank and the advisors to the Prime Minister has failed. The economy is really suffering. So in this context, it is very clear that this government doesn't have a clear direction.
Meanwhile, media spokesperson of the Essential Food Commodity Importers and Traders Association, Hemaka Fernando, said that due to the international price indices for essential food commodities remaining at all-time low levels, there will be no impact on commodity prices in Sri Lanka.
Though there has been an increase in the American dollar by a percentage of 1.5% when compared to last month to present, there will not be any price increase for any of the essential food commodities which we sell out in the wholesale market to the public. The international price indices for most of these food products are at present in all-time low levels. It is extremely satisfactory situation where our country is concerned. But in the long term, if the dollar keeps rising, the pro rata cost that is attributed by the increase of US dollar will come into effect.
Inaugural talks under the Trade and Investment Framework Agreement between Sri Lanka and Australia got underway recently in Canberra, with free trade high on the agenda. Talks also focused on economic reforms and cooperation, market access and investment facilitation, and sector-specific opportunities for investment in both countries. These discussions are expected to pave the way for regular review of trade and investment matters of bilateral interest. The discussion was attended by an Australian delegation led by First Assistant Secretary for South and West Asia of Australia's Foreign Affairs and Trade Department, Kathy Krugman, and Sri Lankan delegation led by Additional Secretary for Development from the Ministry of International Trade, W.A.D. Gunasinghe. This was the first discussion after the Trade and Investment Framework Agreement was inked between Australia and Sri Lanka during the visit of Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull to Sri Lanka in November last year. A global oil benchmark Brent crude yesterday was trading at $74.80 a barrel, and this month has hit highs above $75 a price last seen in late 2014. The US benchmark West Texas Intermediate was trading at $16.60 a barrel. Meanwhile, oil giant Exxon posted first quarter earnings of $4.7 billion yesterday. Profit at Exxon jumped 16% from the same period last year, but still missed analyst expectations despite rapid rising in crude prices. Oil prices are rising after years in doldrums, which has weighed on Exxon, the largest listed oil producer in the world. Well, India's central bank said it is withdrawing a restriction that limited foreign investors to only invest in government and corporate bonds with tenors of 3 years or more, a move that could bolster the domestic bond market. The decision by the Reserve Bank of India announced late yesterday came close on the heels of weak investor interest in two recent auctions that led to a spike in sovereign debt yields. At Thursday's auction of a 7.37% bond maturing in 2023, the Reserve Bank of India was only able to sell out 430 million rupees out of the 30 billion on offer, with the remainder having to be bought by primary dealers. Well, economic growth of the United States and the United Kingdom slowed down during the first quarter of the year, with the US recording a growth of 2.3% and the UK posting a growth of 0.1%, its slowest since 2012.
According to the Office for National Statistics of the United Kingdom, the UK economy grew at its slowest rate since 2012 in the first quarter of the year. GDP growth was 0.1% down from 0.4% in the previous quarter, driven by a sharp fall in construction output and a sluggish manufacturing sector. The figures are a first estimate and are likely to be revised as more data becomes available. Many economists had forecast first quarter growth at 0.3%. Meanwhile, US economic growth slowed to an annualized rate of 2.3% in the first quarter of 2018. The figure is better than the 2% economists had predicted, but still down from the rate of 2.9% seen in the fourth quarter of 2017. Cautious consumer spending, which grew at its weakest pace in nearly 5 years, was blamed for the slowdown.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
On to international news now. North Korea state news agency today called the Inter-Korean Summit a turning point for the Korean Peninsula, while US President Donald Trump said that he would maintain sanction pressure on Pyongyang ahead of his own unprecedented meeting with Kim Jong-un. The North's state-run TV and official KCNA news agency hailed the talks and the leaders' commitment to seek complete denuclearization. International affairs analysts are of the view that seeing even a small mention of denuclearization in a public news agency will be perceived as a breakthrough by South Korean officials.
North Korea's KCNA news agency separately released the joint statement North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in presented yesterday after the first summit in more than a decade between the two Koreas. A day after the meeting between Kim and Moon produced dramatic images and a sweeping declaration of goodwill, South Korean media were replying striking scenes of the two leaders, and North Korea's main state newspaper published a multi-page spread with more than 60 photos from the visit. In their coverage of the summit, North Korean state media made rare mentions of the denuclearization discussion but did not go into specifics, instead highlighting the broad themes of peace, prosperity and Korean unity. The declaration earned guarded but optimistic praise from world leaders, including Trump, who said that only time would tell, but that he did not think Kim was playing, adding that it has never gone this far and hopefully a deal could be made. Still, Trump told reporters he would maintain pressure on North Korea and not repeat the mistakes of past administrations. A senior US official said they are considering Singapore as a possible venue for the Trump-Kim summit.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel says that she will stay in close touch with US President Donald Trump on the Iran nuclear deal, which he could scrap. Merkel described the 2015 international accord as a first step that prevented Tehran from developing nuclear weapons. Trump vowed to never let Iran have nuclear weapons, but would not say if he would consider military force. Merkel was in Washington for a brief working visit with Trump. The optics of her trip contrasted starkly with the pomp and pageantry rolled out for French President Emmanuel Macron during his glitzy state earlier visit this week. The German leader's difference with the US president on trade were laid bare at their Friday afternoon press conference. Berlin expects a US exemption on global duties to expire on 1st of May. On to the Indian Premier League now. The clash between Kolkata Knight Riders and Delhi Daredevils ended with a 55-run victory for the Delhi Daredevils under the captaincy of newly crowned skipper Shreyas Iyer in New Delhi yesterday. Delhi Daredevils is currently at the 7th place of the points table with 4 points in hand.
Going into the last.
Shreyas Iyer and Prithvi Shaw decimated the Kolkata Knight Riders' bowling attack as Delhi Daredevils made 219 for 4 in 20 overs, the highest at this year's IPL.
Oh, hello. All the way, airtime, top tier. Short again. He expected it, he knew what was coming. He's gone straight again. It's another 6.
Chasing 220, Kolkata Knight Riders never seemed in control, and they finished on 164 for 9 with Trent Bolt, Glenn Maxwell, Avesh Khan and Amit Mishra with 2 wickets each.
Big smash over there, but it's right at the fielder.
And swings one leg side. Finishes with a 164 for 9. Delhi.
While Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel beat Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix to take his 3rd consecutive pole position, a German mine 9 points clear of Hamilton in the championship was just 0.179 seconds clear of his rival around the demanding Baku Street circuit. Kimi Raikkonen was on course to snatch pole from his teammate, only to make a mistake at the final corner of his lap. The Finn was 6 behind Bottas, Mercedes and the Red Bulls. Ferrari have won twice already this season, with Red Bull taking victory at last race in China. Mercedes are yet to win.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Well, on to your weather forecast for the next 24 hours. Showers or thunder showers will occur in most provinces in the island during the afternoon hours, with fairly heavy falls, about 75 millimeters expected at some places, particularly in the western, Sabaragamu, central, southern and Uwa provinces. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in the Sabaragamu and central provinces during the morning. With that, let's take a look at the city-by-city weather forecast for the next 24 hours. And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana 24/7. I'm Mahesh Johnny. First at 9 will return tomorrow at the same time. Be sure to join us then. Before we leave you tonight, we would like to take you to the streets of Colombo and various other cities in the island, gearing up with decorations of lanterns and pandals ahead of the Wesak Full Moon Poe Day tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.